Hello, everybody. Thank you for jumping on. I see we've got quite a few people on now, and we're going to grow a little bit more here. Just wanted to welcome you to the official Bay Area Home Buying Workshop. And whether you're a first-time home buyer or you're looking to expand your real estate portfolio, this workshop's been designed to make sure that you have the knowledge and tools you need to succeed in any market that's out there. So I just want to give you a little bit of an intro, and we'll talk about what we're going to talk about in this seminar as we're going forward. So first of all, a little background on me. My name is Keith Walker. I have been in this industry for 28 years now. I'm a second generation realtor. My father was a realtor for several years. We have some fun stories. We can talk about that, and one that I will share a little bit later in the piece as well. We're based here in Silicon Valley. Our main office is in Cupertino that we're located out of. And we're excited. We're excited to share this with you. We have a lot of experience in the area. We've sold thousands of homes over our time, and we've seen probably every single scenario and market, including the wonderful market of 2008. So we've rolled all the way through that. So there's a lot of fun stuff that we can share. Everybody that's going to speak to you today is an expert. We have 4 different speakers that I'm going to share with you on here. Mark that now, Shannon Ellison and Chris Walker. So we'll talk about them as we're going as well. Our goal is to get you out of here in 60 to 75 minutes. And then we'll host a Q&A at the end. You're welcome to jump into the comments section as well and ask any comments that you'd like to. So also, and go through there. If you have any questions, drop them in that chat and we'll go through and we'll make sure that we're jumping into them as soon as possible. One small but important request for us. If you find this information useful, we ask that you share this with somebody else. We do these every quarter, so we can share what the dates are for the next one at the end, and we'll announce that at the end of today. And then we'll be having an option for you when you're done here to access a home buyer guide, to be able to follow us on our various social media links and so forth, so you can stay in the know with everything that's out there. All right. Let's start with the topics that we're going to be discussing today. So we're going to talk about the current market conditions. We are getting this a lot right now. This is the biggest question. What in the world is going on? So we're going to touch on that and discuss what we're seeing and what's happening out there. We're going to talk about the whole, this buyer pays commission thing. How's that working out? What's happening with that if you're not familiar with the changes from last year? Then we're going to talk about the mortgage options, some tips and tricks through the mortgage options and how you can use that to your advantage. We're going to talk about the journey from start to finish. What does it look like? It's not as simple as looking at a house and writing an offer and moving in. There's some pieces to that. So we're going to give you some details into that so you're prepared best. We're going to talk about how to negotiate the best deal. We're going to give you tips for evaluating properties and neighborhoods like a pro would. And then we're going to talk about the common pitfalls and mistakes that are made by most home buyers, and not just first-time home buyers, people that have bought multiple times. So we're going to share with that and go through those pieces so you guys will be able to partake in some of those. All right, let's get us rolling and go to the market, which is absolutely my favorite thing to talk about. So we're going to talk right now about the economic influences that are going on. Clearly, we're seeing those. All you have to do is listen to any form of media and you'll hear about stuff that's going on. We'll talk a little bit about seasonal trends, which are less impactful as they used to be, especially in our area. I'm going to talk to you about what the Silicon Valley effect is. And I think you'll be surprised to hear what I have to say. Delve into microclimates, and we'll delve into what's coming next. So that'll be the first thing that we're going to talk about is the market here. So let me get rolling on the market and give you some ideas as to what's happening and what we're dealing with. So the first thing that's clear, if you're all paying attention, is there's a lot of fear out there, right? It goes with the trade wars going on, the tariffs that are going on. It's caused a lot of volatility, in the stock market. There's been a lot of shock. If a lot of you don't know, even a lot of the people that were close to the decision makers in this process did not know that it was going to happen. And so the moment that it happened, it was a wave of reactions that came out of it. So one of the things that I want to tie in, because we see that volatility of the stock market right now, there's been a long association with Silicon Valley real estate and the stock market for a long time. And there is a relationship between it. So they do follow each other pretty closely. So as you know, most people in Silicon Valley, their down payment comes from the stock market. So we see that really close, but it doesn't follow it on a day-to-day basis. It follows it on a trend basis. So when you see what's happening right now going like this, that doesn't mean the market's going like this right now. And we'll talk about that. Now, if we see the market continue to go like this in the stock market, if it sticks down like that, you'll see the association go with that with the real estate market, but it's not going to be immediate. It takes time to do that, and it takes an elongated trend to make that happen as well. So that's just the one part that I wanted to touch on coming through there, because right now with what we're seeing and what the stock market's doing is everything is headline driven. Everything you see is headline driven. So confidence is down and perception becomes reality for people. So it's an emotional reaction to what they're seeing happen and to the unknown. This happens all the time. Stock market is very reactionary, right? It goes through there. So that's our piece to understand. But the part that I really want you to understand as it relates to housing, and that's what's going to be important to me right now, is housing. The underlying home data is still very, very strong. Inventory is still very low. Sales are very consistent. I can tell you sales have not slowed down. They have not accelerated, but they have not slowed down. So that's a part to keep in mind as well. And our absorption rate is still pretty strong. And the absorption rate is the percentage of homes that are selling versus the inventory that's on the market. That's going to be one of our measurements on how to determine the market moving forward as well. Another piece on this market to pay attention to is with the tariffs, if these go into effect, there's one part of the real estate market that's going to be affected the most, and that's going to be new construction. New construction will be affected the most because home builders are going to have higher costs. There's going to be less room of volume for them to absorb a hit or to get a profit margin out of that. So we're going to see a piece that comes through there. What does that mean? Home builders stop building. We've seen this before. They slow down their building trends. And what happens is existing single family homes that are already there, they start to increase at that point in time because there's less new home construction. There's less people buying new homes because of the lack of inventory for them. And so over the next 18, 24 months after we see that slowdown, we see existing single family homes benefit from that. And that's another side piece that most people don't pay attention to. The other thing to understand, the people who want to buy a home still want to buy a home. Even if they want to hold back and they're afraid about what's happening, they're afraid about the stock market, they're afraid about the validity of things, they don't know what's going to happen. They're holding back right now, but they still want to buy. So what happens then is the demand gets bent up, right? A perfect example for this to the extreme is the pandemic. If you looked at the pandemic and you saw that halt and pause on the market, demand was still there, people still wanted to buy. And the moment everything was lifted, there was this crazy rush. Now, we're not going to be to that extreme, but I just want to give you an example so you can articulate it as well. So what we're seeing right now with what we're seeing in the market, the groundwork was there. All of the underlying stuff was there. Every expert that you looked at and talked to at the beginning of the year spoke about how this was going to be the best year we've had in years. This is going to be one of the strongest appreciations. This is where the piece is going to be there. All those underlying factors are still there. We're one or two pieces of good news for things to take off, one or two. And so you're kind of in this perfect little standing pattern right now as to what's happening. It's opportunistic right now. The one part that I see on something like this, our inventory is too low. The demand is still high to see prices fall. It takes volume for there to be a change like that. And if there's not enough inventory, we don't have enough volume. If there's not enough people taking huge price reductions in their home, there's not enough volume. Price reductions in Silicon Valley are 8% right now. That's a normal number. It's nothing out of control. If we see those start to shoot up to 30 to 40%, if we see absorption rate falls down to 25%, we'll start to see a difference. 2008, which I was lucky enough to experience, and go through that whole market, give you a comparison for inventory in Santa Clara County. In Santa Clara County right now, our inventory is sitting right around 1,100 single family homes. In 2008, it was 16,000. There's a dramatic difference. That's when it takes volume, and that's what it takes to correct. So this is one of those things, if you're sitting there and you're watching, from all the time I've done this is opportunity. So there's a little window right here before those one or two pieces of good news come up, or that 90-day limit comes up for the tariffs and what they decide on it, that we're going to see that opportunity to get in and to take advantage of what we're seeing out there. So, and coming through there. So just remember that. And you'll hear a little bit more here that I want to share on that. Seasonal effects, I just want to touch on those a little bit here. It's a little lighter than it used to be because we've seen so many different variables since the pandemic. We haven't had as seasonal markets as we usually do. But if you're going to go over a typical seasonal market in the spring, from the month of March through June is when 40% of all the sales activity happens, right? If we have something like this in a pause, that might push over into the third quarter as well, but that's usually when we see most of the activity. So we also see most of the appreciation during that time. And I have some pretty staggering numbers that you're going to hear when I talk about that. So let's carry into the Silicon Valley effect. This is the one that's really important. And this was fun when I started diving into these numbers and really going into them. It even blew me away. And I've been involved in this market since back in the late 90s. So every single year, home prices are higher in June than in February, every year. This is the time most of the appreciation happens, right? So how much exactly? Go back to 2019. In 2019, and we're going to use Santa Clara County as our example here, they went from an average sales price of $1.45 million in February to $1.62 million in June. That was 2019. 2020, they rose $110,000 over that span. 2021, $330,000. 22, just $65,000. And in 23, they rose another $300,000 over that 4-month span. It's $75,000 a month over that span. And in the slowest year, 22, it's still $14,000 a month appreciation. Listen, timing the market. This is really where it comes into. When we see opportunity, opportunity is there. And this is what I love about right now. In the last 158 months of data, there were only 6 months that homes did not average selling over the asking price. And the lowest month was 98.6% of the asking price back in December of 2022. That means that only 4% of the time in over a dozen years, homes were selling under the asking price. So this is what we're seeing, and this is what the history of it here. Now listen to this next data point. This is amazing. Only 3 times in the 12 years was the average January sales price lower than the year before, 2016, 19, and 23. And hopefully you caught this by now, that value recouped within just a couple of months. So this past March 2025, so let's go right now. We're talking history, so let's talk right now. This past March 2025, homes are averaging in Santa Clara County a sales price of $2.6 million on average. In 2012, they averaged $663,000. $663,000 in 2012. That's $149,000 a year in appreciation if you bought in 2012 with a 20% down, $130,000 down payment. That would be a 1,391% return on your initial investment. It's a beautiful thing about real estate. You get 100% of the gain on 20% of the investment. So it's a beautiful thing to remember. Now, what can we expect moving forward? We're primed for that other burst. We're in a nice pattern right now. Our personal clients and even myself looking out there to grab up what you can right now, because it's a beautiful time and it's a beautiful segue for that, right? People are still going to be scared. They're still going to sit on the fence. Understandable. But people still want to buy. And what happens when that good news comes out? All of them come back out. And what happens when everybody jumps back out in the market? There's competition again. There's a surge in prices, and away we go. And that's when you can sit on the sideline and go, hey, guess what? I already own my house and I'm taking advantage of all that's going up. So this is another piece. I just did this study based on some investment properties we were researching and looking at. Areas that investors, real estate investors, are buying homes, the properties that they're buying are selling at about a 20% higher absorption rate than the general market. Think about that. What do you think that the real estate investors know that a typical buyer doesn't know? They're selling at a 20% higher absorption rate. So that's telling you everything you need to know about what to jump in. Now, it's all going to be about supply and demand. And that's the thing you have to remember about the real estate market. You need mass movement to shift the market. So watch inventory, watch the absorption rate. You can always follow our market, our market updates on YouTube, but you know it's live. You can always follow our market updates on YouTube, right? And go from there and get those things. Now, of course, the last piece I want to add, there's always microclimates, right? Especially in Silicon Valley. What's your location? If you're near the center of Mountain View and Sunnyvale, you're in the heart of everything, right? The further you get away, the more that it changes. Schools are always a factor as well. Condos, townhouses, single family homes, they're all different. There's an interesting little dynamic right now for like 2-bedroom condos and townhomes are pretty slow right now because of that particular buyer that's coming into there. So look at what each different one is. And when I say that particular buyer, most of the people that get scared coming into it are entry-level first-time home buyers. So, and then when this happens, those are usually the stuff that slows down more than anything. So the last story I want to tell, and then we're going to jump into the buyer's commission thing coming through, is going back to my dad's story. I promised you there'd be a story about my dad. So back when he was a realtor, he was an early employee of Apple, retired early, got into real estate investment, became a realtor. And when he was a realtor in Cupertino, there was a house that went on the market in Cupertino for $100,000, sold for $100,000. First house in Cupertino to sell for $100,000. And it was like widespread panic. Everybody was like, this is crazy. We can't do this. We can't sustain this type of pricing. We'll never be able to hold it together. What do you think that $100,000 house is worth now? If anybody want to guess, 4.5 million, 5 million, somewhere around there. We live in an inflation economy. This is what inflation does. And this is what it does to home prices. So just be smart about how you do it. Sit down with a professional, talk about it, learn how you can hedge and be smart and advance on the market. So that's the big piece that I wanted to see in there. I think I got through that with enough detail. Again, you can always reach out to me after. I'm happy to share anything or stay after for Q&As, and I can share that. The next topic that I want to jump into is this commission thing. Some of you may have heard about it. I'm sure most of you have heard about it, but exactly, do buyers really have to pay commission? What really is this thing? What's legally required? When's it required? What are the different types of pieces out there? So it is a common question we hear, right? Do the buyers have to pay their agent? So here's what you need to know. There's now a written agreement that a home buyer needs to sign with a real estate agent before they can begin their home search. Before literally, the answer is before they walk into a door with an agent. So answering the question, when does it need to be signed? An agent cannot take a home buyer into a house without a signed contract. That's the legality of it right now. Not everybody knows that. Clearly not all home buyers know that. And there's even a lot of agents that don't know that. It's anytime they give advice or they're showing properties. This even applies to virtual tours, right? If they're going through things on the virtual tour and telling them about stuff, or they're discussing things like additions or permits, reports, disclosures, any of that stuff, they have to have a signed contract with the buyer before that. So before signing something, just ensure that that agreement reflects the terms that you've discussed with your agent. We'll talk a little bit about that. Also, understand services and value. In every industry, there's a different level of everything, right? So understand what you want and what you're trying to accomplish and go from there. Now, this is a significant change, right? But it does ensure transparency, and it also ensures professionalism throughout the home buying journey. So here's an important note. If you're just walking into an open house and there's an agent in that open house, it does not apply there. So you can go into that open house with an agent. You can go through there. That's okay. Just speaking to an agent hosting an open house or asking an agent about their services, there's not a written agreement that's required. Now let's go to the two types of agreements so you understand them. They're both right there. Single property and the buyer broker representation. The single property one, this is great if you've never worked with an agent before and you just kind of want to feel the waters and see what it's out, right? You can test the waters, sign this for just one property. Go in and see that one property, go through that process with them. Now, if you're going to make an offer on that property, you're going to have to use that agent, right, as well, because you signed that commitment letter with them, basically. The second one is the buyer broker representation. This is a longer term commitment. By California law, it cannot exceed 90 days. So there's nothing that you can sign longer than 90 days. It's a great period. If you feel comfortable, you've interviewed agents, you've met a couple of them, you have this feel with them, jump into that guy. You have somebody committed to you, right? Start with number one. When you're comfortable, go to number two. And then remember, when selecting an agent, look for someone who will advocate for you and negotiate on your behalf. It's important. Ask a lot of questions, understand who they are. So policies are going to vary. place to place. One of the things that I can tell you about our team and how we're associated is we ensure that the seller pays the buyer's commission. So while the buyer legally is responsible for paying that buyer's commission, it can still be negotiated by the seller. Some sellers will, some sellers won't, some agents on the other side will, and so forth, right? It depends what it is. So we have a specific form put together that says, hey, we get what we negotiate. That's it. So that's the power of negotiation. Stand behind somebody that's there. But again, you'll have to sign something, either one property, up to 90 days. You'll be responsible for a certain amount that's agreed upon in advance. And when an offer is written, they can ask for that money. They can negotiate for that money to pay for the difference on you. But one important piece to know is that whatever number that is in there that you write into that contract, the agent representing you cannot ask for more than that. They're limited to what that number is. So that's just a piece to keep in mind as well. So that is a breakdown. It's not a fun and exciting thing to talk about for a bunch of people, but it's got to be out there. It's got to be transparent. So the next thing that I wanted to jump into is going to be on the lender side. So I'm going to introduce Mark right here. So Mark, welcome. So Mark is on here with us now. He is a true expert. So he is from Rate Mortgage, formerly known as Guaranteed Rate. And the world of knowledge that he has even blows me away. So I'm happy to bring him on to share them with you guys and his knowledge. So he's going to give you some tips. He's going to show you how you can ask him questions later. And of course, he'll be here for the Q&A also. So Mark, I'm going to give it away to you.
Keith, thank you so much for having me on here, Keith. It's a pleasure joining you guys today. And really enjoyed hearing your take on the market, and you're spot on. And that's where lenders come in to the picture. It's really important that the borrower is ready to go from a financial standpoint. And that means not only just understanding the process, but also getting fully underwritten and fully pre-qualified before they go shopping. It'll strengthen their offers. There's many times where we see where agents, they won't even look at the buyer unless they're fully underwritten, fully pre-qualified. With a bit of time, and I'm not talking about a lot of time, with a bit of time, we get almost all our buyers fully pre-underwritten and pre-qualified before they even go shopping, which makes a big difference in this market. It strengthens the offer, and oftentimes it even just levels the playing field, because a lot of other people are pre-qualified that you're competing with. But coming on here today and just talking about first-time home buyer purchases in general, it's important to even understand it from an elementary sense. Why buy a home? Why buy a home versus rent? Well, I mean, the most obvious of that is that when you're renting, you're essentially paying someone else's mortgage. So owning a home is just another form of investing. Keith, you talked about the returns on homes. There's really nothing better than a return on a purchase on a home. And real estate is always shown to go up in value over time. So really what we look at is getting you ready to purchase, understanding the whole process, understanding the needs and then what you'll need to get into a home, a down payment, getting all your docs in order. We see buyers from all walks of life. Some of them are simple underwrites with this W-2 wages. Some of them have W-2 wages with RSUs. We see that a lot in the Bay Area. So there's certain investor requirements when it comes to those. So we're doing all the vetting with underwriting before someone goes shopping. That's the advantage of also working with a lender like us. I'm not a loan broker. I work for the lender. So in essence, Guaranteed Rate is the second largest lender in the country. We do all sorts of loans. We do everything from the most simple government loans to the most complicated, loans that are geared towards self-employment, people that are business owners. We can get them approved with bank statement loans. We can get other people involved with just asset loans. But when we're talking about first-time home buyers, most people are people that are employed. They're people that have jobs, that have either hourly positions or maybe hourly commission, maybe an hourly commission bonus, maybe a salaried commission bonus, RSU. There's a bunch of different things to look for. And I think as someone goes shopping, they really need to understand not only how they get paid and how that affects a lender's ability to get them pre-qualified, but also how it affects their ability to afford what they're getting into. We're in an environment right now, which, as Keith, you said, it's a little bit unpredictable, but the most important thing that we do in getting someone pre-qualified is figuring out, are they comfortable with the payment right now as it is, with the rates where they are? And really, rates are really, although we've had in the last couple of weeks some instability when it comes to rates, they're still really good and they're still very competitive. We now finally have adjustable rates, which are good. I just locked someone in the fives at 5.6% on a 7-year adjustable rate on just a regular government loan today. So, the understanding again with a first-time home buyer is getting to know not only what the way this person gets paid, but what are they comfortable with payment wise, setting their expectations as they go into the process, and literally holding their hand all the way through the process. I have a group of 4 people that work for me. They've all been with me more than 6 years, and they're all tremendous. We work very well with people that don't have a lot of experience. We hold your hand all the way through the process. And if someone is more seasoned, we're respectful of that too, and able to help someone through the process with whatever pace they want to be helped. So, are you ready to purchase your first home? Perhaps you are. I'm sure you've got a down payment saved. If not, are you budgeting? Are you saving? These are the questions that we'll often tackle with a borrower. Now, as far as what we look for when we're looking at a new candidate for a loan, we're looking at other things besides credit history. We're looking, do you have the amount of cash to close? If not, are you able to get gift funds for these closing costs and down payment? We're also looking at debt to income ratio. So we're looking at your other bills, your other debts. Oftentimes I'll get a client that comes to me and he says, or he or she says, I don't have any debt. I should qualify for just about anything. But there could be student loans, there could be credit cards, and there's government requirements when it comes to debt to income ratio. So our job is to really get this person as well structured so they can be the strongest that they can be when they're out in the market. So, tips, what can we give you as tips as far as getting started? For one, obviously you want to keep your credit card balances low. Do payment reminders if you have to. Make sure that all your payments are made on time. Don't move debt around. Keep your credit score up. Go through a monitoring service like Experian.com. See where you're at. Typically, we like to see, especially on the jumbo side, which many people are, especially in the Bay Area, we like to see a credit score of 700 plus. Try not to open new credit if you're planning to buy a house. Don't go buy a car right now. Don't get too many new debts. It really pays to do those things later. So really, that's our job. Our job is to get someone fully underwritten and fully ready to purchase. And we are adept at working with borrowers from all walks of life, all different income levels, and really just here to make the process as easy. And most of all, I think if someone asks us what our real strong point is, besides guaranteed rate, having great rates and programs, it's really our team's communication. And I think that first-time home buyers really benefit from having a lender that on a Sunday afternoon, when they see a house that they're excited about, that they can pick up the phone and say, hey, Mark, can you run numbers on this home? We're there, and we're there to help. Although we're bankers, we certainly don't work bankers' hours. We're available. My team's available at all hours of the day and evenings and when weekends. I'll often be doing a loan pre-qualification on a Sunday afternoon when someone calls me and says, hey, I've got a client and they want help right now. So although we love to get people pre-qualified and all set up, we're also able to help you on the fly as well.
Awesome. Mark, I love that line. Although we're bankers, we don't work bankers' hours. I thought that was great. So that's
It's very, very true, Keith.
Yeah, that's awesome. I had a quick question because you touched on the RSUs real quick. Could you give like a 30 to 60 like second breakdown as to what people should know about using RSUs when qualifying?
So we're actually in a pre-qual situation right now with someone who's getting RSUs, and it seems to be, besides the receipt of them and having them be eligible and be payable, the most important thing to an underwriter, and we're realizing it right now with one of our pre-quals, is having the full schedule of these. So you want to get your schedule from your employer and make sure that the lender has a full schedule of when the vesting happens, also whatever the future holds for RSUs, and like I said, it's not so cut and dry. Although there's many different loan programs, some of these loan programs treat RSUs differently. So once part of the process is really just vetting it with underwriting. There's a lot of back and forth with underwriting and our team, where we'll say, okay, well, this borrower, he's just coming on to 2 years with his employer. These are the RSUs, and it can really get tricky. But again, the advantage to working with a company like ours is we can do all the heavy lifting before you go into escrow. The last thing you want to do is be thinking that you can afford it, and then all of a sudden you say, well, no, you're not eligible for some reason because of the RSU schedule. So the schedule seems to be the most important thing, and we're learning that on one of our deals right now.
Awesome. Awesome, Mark. Thank you. Last thing that I wanted to add, and this has been great. There's a whole bunch of it, so much information in a fast period of time, right? So just want to mention there's a little QR code there. If you want a little bit more from Mark, go ahead and grab that. All this information is going to be available afterwards as well. So, but Mark, one of the things on interest rates that I love having this discussion, and I know interest rates is your field, not my field, but I wanted to speak on this is, there's people and it's dissipating, but there's people out there waiting for the 3% interest rate to come back. So, and historically, from what I know, interest rates are 6 to 8%. That's what they've been historically as a decent rate. And that 3% was a unicorn. We may never see that again in our lifetime. But I just wanted to get your take and opinion on that.
100% agree. I mean, you're not going to see that. I don't think you're going to see that ever again. But where are rates comfortable? I think rates in the 5s are comfortable, and that's pretty much what everyone's shooting for. I can tell you this, from a company standpoint, we're the second largest lender in the country. Even with the current situation where the rate market is a little bit cloudy, we're still ramping up our processors, and we're hiring people at a high pace, realizing that there's going to be a big refi boom sometime in the next 9 to 12 months. So given that and hearing our analysts, we're told that rates should drop into the high 5s by year end. And that's a great thing, but it's also going to make for a really even more competitive market when it comes to purchasing a home. So again, I like to say, you marry the house and you date the loan. Let's just get you in a house. We'll get you refied in the next 9 to 12 months. And in some cases, save you $1,000 a month. The most important thing is, can you afford the payment now? If you can, then absolutely we'll look to refi in the next 9 to 12 months. The last thing you want to do is wait for the rates to come down, because then you're back to 20 people competing for the same home and over asking and all that kind of thing. And that's coming.
Mark, I love what you mentioned on here, because this has been a spot that we speak about. And I'm going to bring Chris on here as well, because he's got the next topic. But it's something we talk about with people all the time. You have that process right now. The rates are where they're at. We've been talking about them going down for a while. All the signs are pointing to them going down. You've got a little, lapse in the market where appreciation is slowed. I want to stress that appreciation is slowed. We haven't depreciated, right? So, but you have that perfect time. And like you said, when those rates go down, everybody jumps in, starts competing.
Mhm.
The prices go up. And for the people that get in at the opportunistic time and they get the rate now, then they refi. It's a win-win because they're getting in at a payment they're comfortable with. Then they get to refi their payment lower and they gain appreciation at the same time.
Right.
It's the perfect scenario, right? So we're seeing some great people doing it right now, and we just want to get that same message out there. This is opportunistic time. And the one thing over 28 years that I hate doing is 6 months later telling people, I told you so. So
Right.
they go, I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have done that. The same thing. I know Chris can speak to that because he's seen it a lot. Mark, you've been awesome. I really appreciate you. I'm going to segue over to Chris here. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Chris, as we jump into there, I want to introduce Chris here. Chris is a third generation realtor, 10 years of experience under his belt, scores and scores of transactions. He's a true expert in this industry. And I say he's been 10 years in the business, but it's literally been more like 15 or 16 because I may have abused child labor laws and had Chris passing out flyers when he was a youngster. So let's, Chris, I'm going to jump you in and have you talk about the process through here because it's a pretty complicated process. There's a lot to know, and I'm going to let Chris take it away.
Yeah. Hi, nice to meet everybody. Thanks for joining today. So, I'm going to go over this chart pretty much as quickly as I can. This usually takes 40 minutes when we actually sit down with somebody and go through this in detail, really sharing the tricks, tips, everything like that. But our goal at the end of the day is really to create educated buyers out there. Whether or not we are a good fit, it's just good to see people take the right steps out there because we see a lot of people do some silly things at the end of the day. So really starting off, like buying a home is really a huge milestone and it can always feel like overwhelming at times. But when you break down the process into steps, it becomes much more manageable at the end of the day. So really, we're just going to go through this and kind of kick it off. I know some people have touched on some parts of this, so I won't go into those as deeply. So really just starting off, like interviewing multiple real estate agents. So there's an alarming stat out there where it's at least 71% of buyers interview one agent. I don't know what the other 29% is doing. They're just kind of going after it. But funny enough, most people end up working with the first agent they meet. And a lot of the time that's because it's a friend of a friend or a cousin or something like that. And we always joke around because we have the adage where, if you don't have a friend in real estate, right, you might not have too many friends around. And so it's one of those ideas that it is a fairly saturated kind of industry, right? But listening and actually getting points of views from different people is going to be really helpful. And you got to make sure you're the right fit with somebody, right? Sometimes it's more of just an enjoyable experience to work with one person over the other person, depending on the knowledge behind the idea. So that's really where we start off. And that's just kind of sitting down. We love to break it down into 2 meetings, really going over the process, going over people's kind of wants, needs, what their goals are, being realistic about it, and then going over the process. So it's going to be your first place that you really want to start at the end of the day. So moving into our next idea is we start with a loan approval. So I know we touched on this a lot. One of the things that I like to talk about most when it comes to the loan approval is there's different loans out there. There's different types of lenders, right? Mark is excellent. It's amazing to be in the industry with people that you've seen that have been through a lot of these cycles and really just have knowledge on how to get creative, right? It's just as it is on the real estate side of things, right? Working with a lender that like you trust, is transparent with you, doesn't hide extra costs, those types of things. They're going to actually help you get your offer accepted at times. And they're going to make it so much more enjoyable at the end of the day. Because, if we're kidding ourselves, if we don't think the financial aspect of buying a home is probably the most stressful part of it. So that's really when it comes down to that loan pre-approval. One thing, small tip and trick that I recommend, especially that helps me with buyers get things accepted, is when you have the chance to get underwritten with your lender, that's always going to be the best bet. That's as close to gold as you can get with having that when you're going into the house. It's pretty much you're getting to a point where we have a very high level of confidence that you're getting this loan and we're not going to find any hiccups and things like that. So that loan pre-approval process is really important. Once again, find somebody that you trust and just vet them and understand, that they're going to give you that calm sense of mind at the end of the day with that side of things. Because once you're comfortable with that and you start understanding how to break down those numbers, it's going to be a lot easier to go jump in the actual discovery process and going and finding homes and things like that. So the next thing that we'll hop into is going to be, going through your wants and needs and touring homes. We always joke around with this one as well, because we have a lot of people sit down with us. And I will say, funny enough, maybe like 70 to 80% of buyers that we talk to that are like, this is what I'd like, they end up buying something completely different or slightly different or something like that. So, as simple as it can be, creating like a value chart for yourself, a pros and cons list, is sometimes as simple as it needs to be to really understanding what you want to do, what you want to go do. Some of the most simple tricks, right, is especially when you're visiting houses, visit them during the day, visit them during the night, right? And just really be open-minded to different neighborhoods. The beauty about where we live in the Silicon Valley is it's pretty hard to come across, say a bad neighborhood, depending on what your, criteria and what you're trying to look for is under your budget. But there's so many of these unique little pocket neighborhoods. And so just going back to my original point is we've seen a lot of people that came across something that they're like, wow, I had no idea this existed. And it was nowhere near where they thought their goals for moving into a place was. So just always keep that in mind. Coming into real estate with an open mind is very helpful, especially when we have competitive markets, we have low inventory, which is quite common in our area at the end of the day. So say we're touring homes, we're finding what we like. Really what the next best step to do is just some real estate agents will just send you the disclosures. They'll say, hey, look these over. All right, let's go make an offer. This, in my opinion, is probably one of the most important parts about purchasing a house, because when we're in areas of like non-contingent markets, right, where pretty much if our offer gets accepted, we're putting our deposit down and, we're committed to that home. We want to pretty much turn every single stone that's available to really understand, what the makeup of this house is, right? We're looking for foundation issues, water damage, right? Most homes are going to have a property inspection and a termite inspection. And so in addition to the seller's disclosures that are going to be provided. So giving yourself ample time to go through those. And of course, talking to somebody that knows what they're looking through is going to be a very, very important factor to that. This is also where you're going to go into the next, if not most important step, is you're looking at your comparables, right? Shannon's going to go over this a little bit more about how to kind of talk about areas, so I won't go into it too deep, but it's just really important to understand what's going on. A perfect example right now is, we saw, the market take a change, and the market can flip on a dime sometimes, and it's quite surprising. And so sometimes you'll find out that a home maybe around the street just sold with multiple offers for X price, and we find that pending information, but now we want to apply that to what's going on. And if we hear maybe there's a certain amount of disclosures out, there's this level of interest, this many groups, that's how we can start to piece the picture together, right? Or the puzzle together to really understand, okay, where do we think this is going to sell and what's going to put me in a good position so that I know I'm not paying too much for a home, but also still being competitive at the same time. So that's going to be a big part of that. So now, once we're getting that, we're making our offer. So we've reviewed our disclosures. We've gone through everything. We're confident about what we want to do. This is where we're going to start putting together, what terms of the offer that we want to put forward. Now, the beautiful thing about real estate is every situation is unique. Nothing is identically like each other, right? Especially when we're talking about locations and terms and all that kind of stuff. And we can get really, really messy with an offer. We can get very, very clean with an offer, right? So it's important to really understand what your options are. When we're in these markets where, like right now, is a little bit more opportunistic, we can get contingencies in there. We can do additional inspections. Maybe we can talk to the seller and try to negotiate some level of pay down for our rate if we want that lower interest rate, or talk about certain concessions, right? So these are all things that become more applicable. So in full transparency at the same time, I'd say 70, 80% of the time that we're in the Silicon Valley, we're in a non-contingent market, especially when we're looking at areas with good schools, things like that. So we just have to be fully ready when we're putting our best foot forward. The very simple chop down things of the offer that we're going to look in most is our deposit, which is usually 3 to 5%. You're only liable for 3% technically if you back out of the deal in some senses. But that's going to be the deposit that if our offer is accepted, that is due within 24 hours of that acceptance. So we just want to make sure that we have those funds liquid and available to send those over. The next thing are going to be the contingencies. There's a few basic ones: property contingency, loan contingency, appraisal contingency, right? So those are going to be the things that we want to pull together as well. And then of course we have your down payment, your purchase price, and then a whole bunch of other things that come together, especially when it applies to your closing costs. So that's really going to be how that is. I really want to touch on the point though, when you're making that offer, the way that you present this offer in a lot of ways is going to be something that helps get that offer accepted. I actually just had one in today, and we came back and we weren't actually the highest offer, but they had confidence in us because we had everything put together very well for them. And they chose to work with us over the other one because of how we presented the offer and how we had everything locked in. So that is very, very important. You don't just want to slap something like that together and throw it out. You're not going to get your offers accepted. And when we're in an appreciating market, as you start losing out, you start to see those prices rise, and things become harder to acquire. So moving on to the next idea is you get your offer accepted. So this is where you should be excited, but you're also going to feel a whole bunch of emotions at the same time. Same thing which happened today with a client, right? Is you're just going to be scared. You're going to be like, oh my God, what did I just do? Even though we felt so confident going into it, you're still going to have that second take at, where does this go next? So just know that that's a common feeling. You did your research up front. You're confident about it. Stay the course. That's always the most important part, right? From there, we do our additional levels of checks and balances at the same time. So once that offer is accepted, we talked about that initial deposit, that 3 to 5%. That's going to go in within 24 hours of when you have that acceptance. And so we just get that together. One thing I always like to drop in there, like wire fraud is totally a thing in real estate these days. So please, please, please do yourself a favor. Make sure you're talking with your lender, your title officer, you're checking these things before anything bad happens. We've seen some pretty surprising things happen at the same time. All right, moving forward, due diligence. So I did touch upon this a lot preemptively. We really want to dive into the offer situation for the most part beforehand. But say we have contingencies, this is where we can go in and dive in further. We should be asking these questions up front, but maybe we have some time to go into it. So important that you're hopping into those things and just understanding the full picture of the property. From there, this is when everything starts to kick in. So you don't see a lot of what's going on in the back end. You're going to have to sign a whole bunch of paperwork, whether it's, online or in person. But everything kind of starts kicking into gear. And the first major milestone that really happens after that is your appraisal. So the appraisal is pretty much what the lender needs to acquire to make sure that this property is worth what we're paying for. And so in that sense, the appraiser goes out, gives their stamp of approval, and we walk away. Once we get that back, that's kind of that sigh of relief. All right, we're good to go. There are situations where the appraisal might come in high, right? And that's uncommon. If it does happen, you got a really, really good deal on that house, right? They kind of have to keep their checks and balances there. Now, on the flip side, if it comes in lower, right, and this is why it's really important for us to do that analysis up front, we have to be prepared to say, we'll use easy numbers. Say the house was $1 million, right, and it ends up only appraising for $950,000. That $50,000 difference ends up needing to come out of your pocket. Now, there's ways to contest appraisals and things like that, but that's more of an in-depth dive in. So I'll just give you kind of the idea of how that works. Okay. So once we go in, next we're going through here, we were getting our inspections, maybe we're visiting the house to go take some measurements, those types of things. Usually we get about one opportunity in the middle of the transaction to go visit the house again. And then we'll have a final opportunity at the final walkthrough. And I'll bring that up in just a second here. So once our loan's approved, this is when what's called the CD, it goes out. And this is when we're allowed to actually schedule the final sign off. And so here you're going to have to do some hand exercises, things like that beforehand, because pretty much you have to go in and just sign a big stack of paperwork that you've probably already seen most of the documents about 3 times inside them. But we live in California, so we love to sue each other, and that's just how it goes. But once you get to that point, that's really where we start to feel like we're seeing the finish line at the end of the day. Moving forward, if we were to kind of go into that idea of, say we got inspections and we found issues, or there was a new disclosure that we were not aware of up front, this is where we actually have the ability to come back and renegotiate. And so in this note, it's really important to have somebody that understands the ins and outs of the contract, because we've had many situations where, something new has been disclosed to us. And sometimes it's a small thing. Sometimes it's a really big thing, like serious foundation issues or something that the seller forgot to tell us about, right? And so in that case, in some cases, we're actually able to walk away from the deal, right? If it's a large issue and we were given something down the line that we didn't initially have, even though we didn't have those contingencies. That's fairly rare, but we just want to make sure we know what is available to us, right? So we can stay protected when we're making this big purchase. Okay, so moving in, once there, we're getting really close. So we're just scheduling our move, utilities, right? Good real estate agent team is going to have everybody you need at the end of the day. A cohesive team is really what you're looking for. You should feel pretty stress-free going through most of this process, out of signing some things, doing some visits, and that's going to be really important. So just getting those things scheduled in advance is really important. And, a lot of the time, real estate closes a little bit late. So just taking that into effect, depending on how the loan's going or any hiccups that happen. Issues do come up in transactions quite often. So making sure you have the right advisement to understand how to take on those hiccups, how to navigate that, making sure the sellers stay happy with you at the same time. That's all encapsulated in that at the end of the day. Coming in, then we go to the final walkthrough. So final walkthrough is, like we said, we're walking through the house just before close, usually a couple days. And right there, we're pretty much making sure the home is as we purchased it. So we just want to make sure they didn't throw any wild parties. There's no new holes in the walls, a pipe didn't burst, those types of things, because this is really our last ditch effort to make sure everything is how we would like it to be handed over to us before we move forward to closing. It's very important you take care of things then, because if you close and we knew about an issue, we've lost a lot of our leverage to actually go do something about it post-close. Some people are nice, other people not so much. All right. We talked about the sign-off right around the final walkthrough, those documents that you're going to have to do at the end of the day. And then right around that time as well, once you're done signing, you're actually going to organize just the final deposit, right? So we talked about that EMD up front. Say that's 3%, right? Say we're putting 20% down. That 17% that's remaining is down, part of your down payment, pretty much goes in and gets wired over. Once that's all done, pretty much we're just playing a waiting game, listening for the good news. And once that gets signed off, you will get notified. And next thing you know, you can get your keys. And so then we hit closing day, and you just want to make sure everything's wrapped up. We're all good to go. Hopefully you're excited at this point. And then you pretty much start that next chapter of your life. So I know that was a ton of information to throw, and we can definitely always go in deeper when it comes down to that. And happy to take questions at the end of the webinar. But that is what I got for you today.
That's awesome, Chris. I love that. I think in the future we need to have your 45-minute presentation of that and just play it on fast forward. So through there, that was a lot of great information coming through there. You mentioned the walkthrough, right, and finding stuff in there. Can you explain to people, on a walkthrough versus a contingency, if they find something in the walkthrough, and you talked about the process of not closing and stuff, but can you give them a little clarity on the difference between that and a contingency?
Yeah. So of course, when we're in that contingency period, say it's a 7-day property contingency, right? We have that protection. We get inspections. If we find things, that gives us the ability to say, hey, we found some stuff. We actually want to renegotiate, or maybe this house isn't for us and we want to walk away. Right. So that's okay. But now when it comes to a final walkthrough kind of situation, just to clarify, right? That's what we're looking for.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So when we come to a final walkthrough situation, right, that's more of, we can't really ask for any reparations or anything like that unless something new has happened to the home that is a defect to it, right? Say we walk around the house and we notice, a slight chip in the wall that was there when we purchased the home. We can't go and ask for, funds or adjustments or things like that.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. And one of the fun part about a sign off with all that paper and my awful sense of humor is once we get done signing, I always go, you didn't see the other pile of paper on the ground. So just watch the reaction on the buyer's face. So got to have fun in this job as well. Chris, awesome job. I know you're a master of this whole system and how it all goes through. Thank you for sharing it with us. Again, we have whole processes available that you can learn about later. Just reach out to us or ask. There will be a whole buyer guide that will have a QR code up here that you can scan to download our buyer guide as well. So thank you, Chris. Appreciate you. All right. I'm going to jump into the next one here, which is negotiating the best deal, because everybody wants to know how to negotiate and how to get through there. Oftentimes people don't want to negotiate, so they have to have the right person there with them. So, there's a lot of pieces to it: pricing, competition, motivators, counter offers. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly for the sake of time today, so we can get to the other things. But the first thing I want to say about negotiation is knowledge is power. So knowledge is power, knowledge is leverage. So it always has been, always will be. A real estate agent to agent discussion is going to be a lot different than a home buyer to agent at the open house discussion. So home buyer to the agent open house discussion is a marketing discussion. So an agent to agent discussion is more of a negotiating thing. They're very, very different. So some agents are quiet. They don't like to share much. They don't like to say much. And some agents talk too much and they want to share more, which is a benefit as well. It's just really important to be quality in negotiation is to really listen, pay attention to what's behind what they're saying, ask more clarifying questions. If it's a vague answer, ask a pointed question to open up the vagueness, to find stuff out. That's really important. The other thing that you're going to have to pay attention to in negotiation is pricing, because the pricing of the home is a factor in negotiation, because some houses are priced too high, some are priced too low, some are priced just right. Just like, what was that? The Three Little Bears, Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Isn't that the story? So hopefully I didn't date myself too much on there. So one of the things you can do though, is if you go back and look at the seller's agent's past history, you can see what their trends are. You can see how they price them, more they sell. There's agents out there that are notorious for taking a home that's worth $2 million and putting it on the market for $1.5 million. So they just have a bunch of offers. They may not get the best value for the house, but they'll sell it fast and they'll sell it well over asking price. So you'll see some of that, and you'll see some that just price it too high because the agent just has a different opinion, or the homeowner might have a different opinion of what the value is. And to be quite honest, the overpriced homes are generally the ones that you'll get the best deal on, because they sit on the market the longest. They have to take price reductions. If they would have been priced correctly in the first place, they'd probably end up selling for more. So that's something to keep in mind. And then also know your competition. If you're going into the thing and you want to negotiate properly, how many offers are there? Are there 3? Are there 5? Are there 7? Are there 20? Ask the agent. Be particular and ask what other agents are bringing in offers, right? What are people saying about what they want to offer? You can ask anything you want to ask. It's just not always going to be answered, but ask those questions and find out what you can. And again, an agent to agent is going to get a lot more, especially if there is a reputation and relationship that's been in there over time. The other part for a strong negotiation is to know the seller's motivations. What's the most important thing to them? Is it price? Is it closing? Is it a rent back? Is there something emotional that's attached to it, right? So if you know what that is, you can know that, hey, maybe if this is the most important factor, you can take this maybe on price and make sure you give them this, right? There's ways to come around that and know what it is. So know what those differences are, what the motivations are. There's always going to be a give and take if you want to have a strong negotiation. There's one thing I learned a long time ago in negotiations, and I can tell you this for myself, when I buy properties, you always want to get the best deal. But the best negotiation is where everybody is happy. Seller's happy with what they got. The buyer's happy with what they got, right? It's always a win-win, and it's a good situation in there. But there are going to be different times when you can get better negotiations through there. The other thing I would recommend, if you're in an open house, play nice with the agent holding the open house, especially if it's the actual selling agent. Sometimes it's not, but if it's the actual selling agent, play nice with them. Make sure they know who you are. Share a story. Talk about your dog. Talk about what company you work at. Do something that's going to help them have you stick in their mind. So when you're writing your offer with your buyer's agent and that agent is able to go talk to them, they remember you face to face, and that brings a little bit more power to your offer, believe it or not. So it's different than just a piece of paper with a name on it. So keep that in mind as well. The biggest piece that I have to share on here when you're negotiating, because a lot of people, they're not comfortable in multiple offers and they have a hard time in multiple offers. They don't want to compete. They don't want to go through this. My piece of advice is just to know what your walkaway number is. If you know what your walkaway number is, and what I mean by that is you wouldn't pay $1 more than X price for that house. If somebody else bought it for $1 more, they can have it. Then you're not competing. You're putting your best foot for what you want to do. The other thing about walkaway number to know is, say your walkaway number is 2.5 million and you offer 2.4 million with however many offers and you don't get the house and you found out it sold for 2.5 million, you'd be frustrated, right? Know that walkaway number. So know what's there. So the, I always say the deal in Silicon Valley is getting the house. That's the deal. So if you get it, you're happy and you're happy with the payments. That's what's important. And knowing those numbers we talked about later, clearly it's going to work out in the long run. Now, here's the thing about a counter. And this is the most important part when you go into negotiations, because everybody wants to get a negotiation. They want to go counter. They want to offer a price and say, hey, I'm offering this, expecting a counter. A counter offer is never a certainty. Even if you're in the open house and the agent in that open house tells you that they will issue counters, it's not the agent's decision. It's the homeowner's decision. A counter does not always come to you. As a matter of fact, I would say in this day and age, 90% of the time, people do not receive a counter. It's the best offer written in the first place that the seller wants. Sometimes not the highest price, but the best written complete offer that gets the deal done. Sometimes it's going to be price. Sometimes that's just it, right? So, but agents may say one thing, they may do something else because of a seller choice, because something just stood out, right? One offer came in that just blew everybody away, so they're not going to get a counter. So don't ever think that you're going to get a counter, even if the agent says that's going to be the case. You're most likely going to be one shot and done unless you're in that 10%. So just keep that in mind. Know your walkaway number. That is going to be your power. As I finished with that on the negotiation, because I was going to try to keep that short, one of our best negotiators right here is Shannon, who is excellent at negotiation. She's a senior agent on the team. She's actually our longest tenured agent here on the team. And she also has an outstanding social media presence in real estate. So you should check her out and see what she has to say. This is Shannon Ellison. And Shannon, I'm going to bring you in and have you chat about some little 15 tips for evaluating neighborhoods.
Awesome. Thank you, Keith, for that very warm introduction. I will keep it brief, but I work with a lot of buyers. So we're constantly evaluating properties. And here's a quick list of everything that we hit on just to make sure we're properly evaluating properties before they go in and put an offer on it. And I'm sure you guys know, especially those of you out there with school-age children, schools is one of the biggest drivers of property value is the district. Better the schools, more desirable the home generally. There could be just one street dividing a neighborhood that has two different high schools, and homes could be like $200,000 or $300,000 difference in values. So even if you don't have school-age children, you got to know the schools just for resale value or potential future rental purposes as well. Next is the street location. Is the home on a through street? Is it a cul-de-sac? Or maybe it's at a stop sign intersection. There's going to be more noise, obviously. And obviously, if there's like a freeway in the backyard, you might save money on the purchase price if you've got a little bit more noise, depending on how hot the market is, of course. But definitely pay attention to the things outside the home and the location, as well as just the facts of the home itself. Which leads me perfectly into noise and nuisances. Don't just tour a home with your eyes, but close your eyes and really listen to the area. Are there planes, trains, maybe barking dogs? You can always refer to the disclosures where the seller might disclose these things, but after a seller has lived there for maybe 10, 20 years, they may not even notice that the BART train goes by every hour anymore. But you're going to notice it, at least for the first few months that you live there, until you get used to it. Next is views. Views obviously affect a property's desirability. Views of the hills or mountains can mean buyers might pay much more for those homes. Remember to look for things like power lines too, negative views or eyesores. Be aware of the lack of views. And in townhomes, maybe you're looking right into your neighbor's living room. So open up the shades, especially if they have the blinds drawn while you're touring. And next is walkability. Some people see value in walking distance to major amenities, where some are going to be more keen to be further away from downtown life. And if you're okay with further commute times, maybe you save money by purchasing a home on the outskirts or away from central downtown locations. But that's something that you just want to go over in your wants and needs list, go over your preferences, and then just set your search radius accordingly. Which leads perfectly to commute. I'm sure you guys noticed that the majority of tech companies are in the heart of Silicon Valley, right? Sunnyvale, Mountain View, Santa Clara. And the closer that you get to those areas, the more expensive the homes get. So decide how far away you want your commute to be for work, and then go and drive that commute at the times you're going to be doing it to and from the house before you make an offer. So you can really get a feel for the drive time that you're going to be living with for maybe the next several years. Future developments. I really like this one because some people don't even think about it, but city websites are such a great resource to find what permits have been filed for projects like that are still in the planning phases. And this can help you decide if it might hurt or help your future property value long term. It's usually going to help your home, obviously, if you've got projects like parks and schools, churches, community centers, but maybe plans for like government or industrial sites might be a different story. Visit those city websites. Next is types of lots. Size and usability of a lot is super important. You might be looking at a house and say, oh, it has a 15,000 square foot lot, but maybe that's not twice as desirable as a 7,500 square foot lot if that big lot is on a large hillside with less than half of it being usable. And shape is also important as well for if you're considering building out the square footage or if you're going to put an ADU. So pay attention to that lot as well. Next, we have hazard zoning. This is a quick one. It can affect your property insurance if you're in those high risk zones. So check out one of the documents that's required in that disclosure package called the NHD. That's the Natural Hazards Disclosure for details on where that certain property falls. Property facing. This is a really big one for a lot of the cultures. If you practice Vastu or Feng Shui, property direction and location in a neighborhood could affect the value, but we don't see it so much during like very low inventory competitive markets like we have here in the Bay Area, but it may be possible in this opportunity window that Keith is talking about. So something to pay attention to. The next is nicest home on the block. It is not always the best plan. In fact, being maybe the worst house on the block could actually be better for value because of all the bigger or more upgraded homes around it actually bringing up that property's land value. Not necessarily the structure itself, but remember the main value of your property, especially in Silicon Valley, is not really the materials of the structure itself, but it's the land that it sits on. And that is one of the biggest driving forces of our appreciation in this area is just the lack of new land to build on. So we all know with low supply and consistent demand, prices either stay stable or they move upwards. And next is multi-units. This is where when you're driving the neighborhood, really consider driving up and down not just that street, but the parallel streets as well, and see if there's any like rows of multifamilies or small apartments nearby, because having a high concentration of renters in an area or close by can affect home values over time as well. The less rental turnover an area has, generally, the better it is long term. Next is a really important one, and it comes up a lot during home tours, is cost of upgrades. Consider the cost and be realistic. A good agent is going to be able to ballpark the cost of floors, kitchen and bathroom remodels, and costs for new appliances like a fridge or washer and dryer. It is so easy, and I see it so often for buyers to overestimate or overinflate the cost of very minor fixes and repairs that, and they completely pass up really good homes because they just don't know realistic costs. So ask your agent. I'm always happy to provide ballpark estimates for people when they have them. And then talk to the neighbors. This is the best way to find out the truth about a neighborhood. I have knocked on the doors on either side of a home that some of my buyers are about to offer on and found out some interesting things about the neighborhood that we would not have known any other way. The seller wouldn't certainly know or disclose them, or maybe they didn't want to, but talk to the neighbors. You'll find out a lot. And next is due diligence. So Chris talked about that. I'm going to breeze through that one. We know how important it is to review all the disclosures with a qualified agent so you know everything going on with that property. And that's it. But some parting thoughts before I hand it back over is just remember that when you're looking at your checklist for a property and it's checking a lot of your boxes, the chances that it's checking all other people's boxes are pretty high as well. But if you love the home and you're comfortable with that mortgage payment, make an offer on that house, because that closing price is now going to be the new benchmark for that size home in that neighborhood. And then, that next home that comes up on the market is probably going to sell for more. So get in while you can, lock that rate, and watch your value rise for years to come. That's all I have. Thank you, Keith.
Awesome. Thanks, Shannon. That was great. So I appreciate it. That whole leapfrog effect. So one becomes the next benchmark, then it becomes the other. That's a lot of great pieces to talk into. This ties right back into what Chris was talking about, writing down your wants and needs list, taking some of these items into consideration. Very, very helpful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Awesome. All right. Let's go to the one where, first, as we are about to jump into this one, I want to tell you that this is a time right now, because you want to hear these things. You want to know what these are. Jump up and down, slap yourself in the face, do a couple of jumping jacks, do something, get that energy going. We're just over an hour in here now, and I want to get you out of here coming through. So these are 7 common pitfalls that happen. So I want to make sure that everybody knows these and we jump through them, not thoroughly, but at least touch on them. This is also a good time to start dropping comments into the comment section. What kind of questions you have, anything that we can answer for. We'll be here for a Q&A afterwards if you'd like. So start dropping them in there right now. So some of these you may have heard already today. It's going to be no surprise. The first one, number 1 up here, these are in different order from what we're seeing up on that list over there. Not interviewing multiple agents or looking at houses before this step. So interview multiple agents, talk to multiple people. Just like every other industry, there's a 10% that shine to the top, and not everybody is the same. Plenty of people do things different ways, and there's different matches for everybody. So make sure you find the right match for yourself. And it's hard to go looking at houses without going through that process first and knowing it. So do that first, interview multiple. Number 2, and Mark's going to stand behind this one, don't make a large purchase when you're trying to buy a house. Don't go buy a new car when you're trying to buy a house. So it's only going to affect you. It's only going to hurt you. I'm going way, way, way back to 1998 when I started. I had a client that was challenging to get into a home. We were trying to get him into a home. He could just barely make it. And one day he came pulling up in his brand new car, even when we were struggling to get him into a house in the first place. And it was the first client that I chose not to work with at that point in time. So don't do it. You're just going to hurt yourself. Number 3, not understanding your budget. Know your budget, right? You have to be comfortable with your payment. You have to know not just the mortgage payment, but your property taxes. If you have an HOA due that comes into there, what your insurance is going to be, it's going to vary by the location that you're in. So make sure that you know your budget and all of that's together. Number 4 is not getting pre-approved. Chris touched on this. Mark talked about how to do it. Getting pre-approved and getting underwritten is even better. So make sure you're going through that process to make sure you know where you're at. Because sometimes you'll find out that you can comfortably afford more than you think you could, or you might not be able to afford what you hope you could. And then you go in there and you start looking at houses. And trust me, when you can afford a $2 million house and you go looking at $3 million houses, and then you realize you can afford a $2 million house, you don't like anything that you see. So get pre-approved and know what you can afford. The next one is not understanding closing costs. There are costs outside of your down payment that you have to deal with. There's escrow fees, there's title fees, there's inspections, there's appraisals, there's wire transfer fees. There's all kinds of stuff that ties into. So city transfer tax. So know what those are, know the breakdown of those when you go in. You could be somewhere between $6,000 to $20,000 in additional fees on top of your down payment. So just make sure you understand what those are. Oh, and by the way, if you have to pay for your buyer's agent commission and they aren't able to negotiate that, that's another 3% of your purchase price, or 2.5%, or whatever you agree to, that comes into there as well. So know that. The other one, Chris talked about this in due diligence, and this is not reviewing the disclosures, or if you're in a homeowners association, their documents, or getting the proper inspections, right? It's very difficult to write an offer on a pre-existing home that doesn't have inspections and not getting your own. That's when all the trouble comes into play. So make sure you're reviewing them. You know what this means. What does it mean when a galvanized pipe is attached to a copper pipe and there's corrosion going in? Why is that? And why is that happening in this house? What are the certain ages for different systems? What does a 15-year-old water heater mean? How long is that going to last? What's the purpose of it? So knowing through these disclosures and what people say and what the inspections say is really important. The next one, Shannon, you hit on this one, which I thought was a great one to touch on as well, is not understanding the cost of upgrades. What does it cost to renovate a bathroom or a kitchen or to change the floors or to change the windows, right? Sometimes it costs less than you think. Oftentimes it costs less than you think. Sometimes it costs more. A lot of it is dependent on what type of materials you use, the quality you use, so on and so forth. But don't just make assumptions. I can tell you this from a seller standpoint, for somebody selling a house, one of the things that we talk about, if somebody comes in and they haven't remodeled their bathroom and the house is on the market, a buyer is usually going to come in and negotiate based on that bathroom costing 2 or 3 times what it really does to remodel. So know what those costs of upgrades are. The other part, Chris, you hit on this, not understanding the risks of non-contingent offers. Non-contingent offer is exactly what it says. Non-contingent, you're done. There's no out, right? You make an offer, you cancel the contract, you lose your deposit. So you have to understand how that works and what the process is. Do all your due diligence ahead of time. Know what it means to make a non-contingent offer. Know how to protect yourself to make a non-contingent offer. You really have to know the risks of doing that. In Silicon Valley, it's a norm. So you really have to be prepared and understand it. Here's another one that's important. We're almost there. I've got 3 more. Shopping for insurance too late. Insurance companies, especially in California, have gotten very, very difficult. They don't like to give policies anymore. So you've got to find a company that's willing to give a policy on your house. You have to know if you're in a certain zone. Are you in a flood zone? Are you in a fire hazard zone? Are you in an earthquake zone? Any of those things are going to be a factor. So shop for insurance early, because you may run into some complications and it may be more difficult to find insurance than you would think in this day and age. Here's the last 2. The last 2 that I want to get is where I can truly pull out my almost 3 decades of experience and share with you probably the 2 of the most important things that I can share outside of buying the home that you're comfortable with and can afford and that you like. That's the most important of all. But nickel and diming in negotiations and losing out on a house that you want. I've seen people lose a $2 million house over $10,000 and then be really frustrated that they didn't get the house they wanted because they wanted to go back and forth and cut it to a thing. I just had this experience with a buyer from another agent that wanted to write an offer on one of our listings that lost an offer because at the last minute they changed their mind by $10,000 as well. Coincident, what a number there. What's the difference going to be? We talked about the leapfrog effect. How's that going to affect your payment? Really think about it. Think about how is this when you break it all down, and is it worth it to you in the house, or do you just want to negotiate to try to get that deal? I've seen people out there keep trying to get deals, and 5, 6, 7 years later, they still don't have a house. So remember that when you're going through and trying to do that. So again, Silicon Valley, the deals get in the house. The last thing is just looking for a deal or waiting it out. Just waiting it out. I'm just going to wait until the market crashes. I'm just going to wait till everything goes down. Well, if you're going to wait, this is the time that you wait for. What we're seeing right now. This little pause is the perfect time. But the people that I see wait and hold back and are looking for something in particular, they usually end up remaining renters. And maybe they want to be. But if you truly want to be a homeowner, you jump in, you get it going. If you're comfortable with the payment and you love the house, nothing else really matters. So go in there, get what you want. I can say that personally because that's the same way that I've handled things in my own state. So those are the big mistakes. Hopefully, that's all stuff that you guys can take from. I'm going to pop up a couple things here right now. This is our next event dates. So our next buyer workshop, when we talked about this earlier, if you enjoyed what you saw here and you thought it was beneficial, please share it with other people because we want to get the word out to as many people as we want. It doesn't matter what realtor they work with. We want them to have the knowledge. So these are the next dates. Thursday, July 10th, same thing, 6:30 p.m. And Saturday, July 12th, we also have a seller workshop that's coming as well. We also have a seller workshop on Saturday, May 10th. So we can send that information out if you ask for that. Or if you just go to the website, bayareaworkshops.com, you'll see all of the information that's on there. The other piece here is our YouTube channel. So if you'd like to be informed, if you think what you heard here was great and you want to hear it on a regular basis, we have a YouTube channel. We put up multiple videos a week. There's where you can scan to jump into there. We're already over 17,000 subscribers to our YouTube. We've had over 1 million views. So the content on there holds weight. Please go on there and check it out. It's we enjoy it. We all love making videos, and we want to share content, and we want to bring as much to the community out there as we can. So please jump on there, go from there. And if you want to follow us on anything, this is to our link tree right here. So you can connect with us on social media. Those are the spots to do it. Just jump on there. Scan that piece right there. As I'm throwing everybody's faces on here, we will get out of there and get out of the way of there. So, but that is where you can join us on LinkedIn. So, or linked on our link tree, which includes LinkedIn. So, jump on there. So, last thing I want to say, thank you to all these wonderful speakers through here. I don't see any questions coming in the comments, but I wanted to say thank you to everybody on here. Even with a great day full of information like today, we know a lot of this info is not going to be retained. It's a lot. So I'll make you an offer today. We're committed to helping you, and we'll be happy to continue this workshop at a coffee shop or at our office with no obligation, just for your information. Simply reach out to us, right? You can implement this plan with whoever you want, whatever realtor you want. However, we want to give you this bonus because we just want to make it a better experience for everybody involved. So we really appreciate you. We really thank you for your time. We're just around the time that we said. We're about 5 minutes over, and it looks like almost everybody stuck this out. So I appreciate all of it. Chris, Mark, Shannon, any parting words?
No, this is gold. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for joining, everybody. Appreciate you sticking it through.
Same here. Thank you, everyone, and happy to answer any questions. If anyone wants to reach out, I'd be happy to answer any specific questions too.
Awesome. We're here for everybody. Thank you all. We appreciate you. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.